when I cover this stuff, and even going back to like 2004 and 2003, I talked to UFC and boxing, and I was not into this rivalry. I didn't care. But I always felt like when you went to one or the other, it was like we have to crap on the other one. Mm-hmm. And, boxing's pretty healthy. UFC, we can quibble with matchmaking, but they're kicking ass in terms of money. So I always appreciated the fact that you were open. You weren't just an MMA guy back in the day.
No, they are different communities. They're very different communities.
Why?
Well, dude, I'm going to say something. I'm in no way trying to be provocative, but it really is true. There is a massive demographic difference between UFC and boxing audiences. Boxing audiences trend heavily African-American and Latino, and UFC audiences trend heavily towards whites. Now, of course, there are all different kinds of fans of all different kinds of varieties and cross-sections and blah, 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 but basically there is just different communities gravitate to different combat sports. For me, I didn't want to make a choice. I just wanted to watch really great fighters do really great things. That's it.
So I'm going to ask you, because I enjoy combat sports. I like mixed martial arts.
Here we go.
No, it's actually a positive.
It's a positive. I just want to know, can you explain this to me in terms of what this moment is, right? On Twitter, it's always like, put this in NBA terms. I like this. The energy's awesome. People are clearly very excited for this. But for me, as somebody who doesn't follow boxing, I don't understand the magnitude of what is going to happen on Saturday.
Yeah, Celtics, Lakers, Bird, and Magic.
Wow,
yeah,
really?
Sorry. I don't think that's in any way.
Wow.
I mean, obviously, those guys are titans of a sport, titans of iconic franchises. There's going to be some ways in which this comparison falls apart. You're talking about in Spence and Crawford, two of the most skilled operators, undefeated. They have taken on everyone. Literally, you could say Keith Thurman is left. Not a bookmaker in this city would favor Keith Thurman to beat either of these guys, not even make it out of the fight going the distance. So you're talking about a iconic division at 147. This is, of course, where Pacquiao and Mayweather had fought, and Sugar Ray Leonard, and so many heroes, I use that word quite genuinely, of boxing have been. This is the heir to the greatest, arguably one of the greatest divisions out, certainly outside of heavyweight, and that long tenure they've had of putting on iconic matchups between iconic fighters. The winner of this can claim to be the best fighter in boxing. They're undefeated. All four belts, first time in the four-belt era. That's going to be happening at this weight class. What more could you possibly want? And let me add another detail there. Who are they as fighters? Because everyone said, well, Mayweather and Pacquiao was big, and then the fight was kind of a dud, which I agree, it kind of was a dud.
They were also old at that point.
Right.
They should have fought in their prime.
I mean, Manny after the fight was literally like, my shoulder hurts.
Right.
It's like, yeah, join the club, guy. But in all seriousness, Crawford's a little bit older, 33, and then 35, and then you have Spence at 33. Dude, let me just tell the audience, if they are unfamiliar with some of these guys, Errol Spence, if you try to describe his boxing style, is a Terminator. An absolute come forward, march you down, but not a brawler, a scientific, high IQ pressure fighter. That is who he is. On the other side, who is Bud Crawford? He is messy. He is the magician. He is the guy who dazzles you in ways you cannot possibly believe until you see it on replay. You're like, oh my God, he did that. Steph Curry from the half court mark, right? I mean, just doing things that you couldn't possibly imagine other fighters doing. All those things combined tomorrow, right here. What is there not to like?
Well, first off, I mean,
was that a good answer?
I was on the fence about buying it, but I think I'm in now.
On the fence?
Yeah. Well, because like I said,
it is expensive.
It's expensive. And again, as somebody who just didn't really understand what the moment is, and I will say this, one of my biggest complaints is when you've heard about boxing is these fights just generally don't happen, right? It's like catch weight, it's no belts on the line, whatever it is. Are they getting better at that? I was watching you guys on the weigh-in.
Right.
I think it was Ariel who had a stat about, how, as many times as belts have been on the line throughout this era. Is this something boxing is getting better at, putting these guys that need to fight together?
So I can say this year, yes.
Okay.
How long that will continue, I do not know. But right now, we're in an era where guys are risking it for the biscuit. You mentioned the stat where, for example, if Bud Crawford wins tomorrow and unifies all four belts in this weight class, this will be the second weight class he's done that in. He did it previously in the last weight class, right? When he did that, when he beat Julius Ndongo and stopped him, I think, second or third round, that was the first time any boxer had done it by that point in 11 years. In 11 years. Now look at how many guys are crossing the political aisle, going to another promoter, going to a different network, or forcing the network they're with to say, look, let me go. We just saw Stephen Fulton Jr. fight Naoya Inoue in Japan on Tuesday. I got to tell you, Stephen Fulton Jr. is not, rep by any Japanese promoter. He's not rep by ESPN. He's a PBC guy, supposed to be on Showtime, but they worked out a deal to go make that happen, and I know he lost. But this is the thing we have to say. We always criticize these guys for not taking a risk, and then when they lose, oh, well, you're a bum, you lost.
Yeah.
No. Stephen Fulton Jr. and these two guys both taking risks to make it happen. That's what you want. There's a spirit of that happening right now. It's working out at the box office. How long that will last, I do not know.
Can I ask one more?
Of course.
Is that fighter?
Luke Thomas is with us, by the way.
Right. Is that fighter driven or is that promoter driven in terms of what we've seen recently?
A little column A, column B, but I'm going to say mostly fighters. It's mostly the fighters. Like, for example, how did this fight get made? These guys got on FaceTime and being like, okay, forget all this other blah, blah, blah. You and me work this out. And then, of course, the lawyers got involved and did the, T's and the crossing the T's and dotting the I's. But it was them taking the initiative to make it happen. It wasn't like they were saying, well, my promoter will handle this. You hear that kind of thing all the time. Well, that guy will do that for me. No, they made it happen. And so that's why we're here. It's really, and listen, Errol Spence has said it's a throwback fight since we covered their opening presser in New York City. It's a throwback fight. It's a 1980s fight. But he also said it that day, we have to show fans and we have to show networks that you should not be penalized for taking a risk. You should be praised. You should be complimented, and you should be paid for it. They're going to be. This is the fruit of all that labor.
So it sounds like you're optimistic that the winner of this fight, especially if it's a really good fight, could both guys then leap ahead to other divisions? Could it convince other fighters at 154 and 160, and we have a little 2-3 year era here where we're making a lot of fights? Because that's always been the area where there's talented fighters, but we need the fights.
Right. I mean, and we're coming off the heels again. I'm going to say it again, Tank and Ryan, right, where these two guys.
That did Bafo numbers, right?
I think 1.2 million pay-per-view buys, which in 2023 is like, dude, that's like 2.5 million buys 10 years ago, or even less than that probably. But in general, I think I would just say that we as a community, if you like boxing, this is the kind of fight that you should be okay paying for. I mean, how many times do you see people like, yeah, I'm going to stream that one. And, you can't really argue with them because it's like the third pay-per-view that month, and you understand.
Right.
Dude, you need to put your dollars in this business where it matters. And not to say we're trying to enrich everybody who's already rich, but rather if people are going to take sacrifices, so to speak, to bring you something like this, it should be rewarded at the box office and at the pay-per-view buy rate. Do
you hate the crossover fights, boxing MMA? Do you hate Diaz and Jake Paul? Do you guys have that fight next week?
What do you mean?
Showtime.
I think it's a DAZN fight.
Okay.
Yeah. And
we'll start with that one because Ngannou Fury is a whole different follow-up.
I mean, it's like, dude, do I think it's a great fight? Like, I like Nate. I'm not going to say bad things about Nate.
Right.
The reality is this. I was just talking to Chris Algieri over here, who, of course, fought Errol Spence. And we were talking, and, in boxing, for example, Fury and Ngannou, boxing fans are irate that Fury basically ducked Usyk in order, like he had the fight to make, for example, a unification, one face, one name, one guy. This was the moment, and he ducked that to go make the Ngannou fight. But on the MMA side, it's like, yo, Francis is about to get paid, right? You just don't see, because of the market structure, MMA fighters can't make bags like that. So you're asking me about Diaz and Jake Paul. Is it Spence Crawford? It's not. But am I happy to see a guy who's been in the trenches like Nate Diaz get a bag? Yes, I am.
Can Diaz end this?
Enough
of Jake Paul. I'm impressed. He's gotten a lot better. He's somewhat formidable against the guys he's fought.
Yeah. I think the issue with Jake Paul is like, dude, Jake Paul's gotten Tyron Woodley paid. He got Ben Askren paid. He's going to get Nate Diaz paid. He got Anderson Silva paid.
Maybe we don't want it then. He's actually helping out a lot of MMA fighters.
Who are these MMA fans who don't want to see these guys get the bag? I don't even really understand.
I'm just talking about it from the standpoint of, like, stop having a guy who's a YouTube fighter take out MMA. It doesn't make them look good as strikers.
No, it really makes them look quite bad. And, of course, he's not fighting guys in their prime. He's fighting them at the end of the run. And they extended it, by the way, from an 8 to a 10-round fight. I do think that changes the equation for Diaz a little bit. But, do I care about it? Again, it is what it is. It's not high-level boxing, but more power to him.
Do we ever get the crossover the other way? Because we had Tyson Fury, right? What was it? The walk into a dark room and I'll come out.
Yeah. You're not coming out if it's a fight in a room.
Right.
Rogan got the whole thing started, and it was like, if we go into a room. Like, if you go in a room, it's not going to be a freaking stand-up boxing match.
Right.
It's going to be a street fight. You're going down in an instant, and Jones is going to kill you.
So it's funny. There's been guys over the years in boxing boxing who you thought maybe could cross over. Kermit Cintron was a wrestler previously before he got going. How about Bud Crawford? You guys ever seen Bud Crawford wrestle? Yeah, dude is good. Yeah. Very good.
Wow.
So he could have been somebody you would imagine wouldn't be that hard to train. The problem is, dude, why would you go to a place where the market is monopolized? You don't have access to the top talent. You're not going to make... Like, here's the thing. Everyone's like, oh, these MMA fighters are showing these boxers how to cross over. No. They're going for the biggest check. And if the roles were reversed, you might see the opposite. But because it's not, you don't. It's a market function, not, a certain kind of martial arts bushido.
I'm glad Ngannou's getting paid. I think he's going to get slaughtered.
Probably. In all
You're talking about
right?
one of the great defensive boxers in heavyweight history against a guy who's probably going to gas out quickly.
And also, we've seen Fury drop before, but it was Steve Cunningham, who is, a kind of like a cruiserweight, Francis is big and he's powerful, but he ain't cruiserweight fast, and Tyson, unless Tyson really just goes, this bum isn't going to do a thing to me, and shows up fat and out of shape, then it could be a bit of a problem, but in all likelihood, there's really no good reason Francis should win.
Luke Thomas, where can people find your stuff on a regular basis?
Yeah, I work for Showtime and CBS, but the best place to go for one-stop shop everything, youtube.com/Morning Combat. Morning Combat is my show, and the combat is spelled with a K. No, I didn't make that choice. They made it for me.
It's a good one, though.
They made it.
What do you guys got in terms of coverage tomorrow?
Yeah, so my co-host will be covering the UFC fights, so he'll have a post-fight show once the fights are over. I will be doing the prelims tomorrow for Showtime. You can catch it on the Showtime Sports YouTube channel. And then after the fights, I'm going to be doing a post-fight reaction, Spence Crawford, Morning Combat.
By the way, this guy is a great dad. At least from what I see on social media. I don't know.
Why do you say that to me? I'm a dad, too. Are you
I love you.
How old is your kid?
I've got 2. One is 4, one is 2.
I've got one that's just turned 4.
Okay, yeah.
Love him.
I love John's parenting. When we talk about it, I'm like, I don't want to say old school, but he is a disciplinarian.
Yeah, I mean, you got to leave him in a hot car once in a while. You know what I'm saying?
A little bit. Like I said,
we're on live radio. Dump.
When we go out, you just leave them with a bag of food and some water. They're fine.
I love it. Awesome, dude. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you, Steve.
I've
known Steve a long time, man. You're still doing your thing. I'm really happy to see it.